What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aidan, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting very close towards all the season reviews coming to an end on this channel as we talk about three players today that I think many people will have little to nothing to say in terms of their future with the Chicago Bulls. Probably didn't get the most game time, the most opportunities on this team as well, but at the end of the day, did play a role in one way or another, and we're going to try and wrap things up before we get to the big three of this Chicago Bulls team and their season reviews at a later time. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about these three guys' future in the NBA. Is it with the Chicago Bulls? Is it elsewhere around the league? And do you think any one of these guys deserved a little bit more of an increase in their production with this Chicago Bulls team? Now, the first thing I want to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, obviously these three guys, as I said before, they're not the main guys on this team. At the end of the day, they probably won't have massive futures on this team either, but there still could potentially be a future for some of these guys with the Chicago Bulls. The three guys that I'm going to be talking about today is Tyler Cook. I'm also going to be talking about Tony Bradley, and I'll be talking about Matt Thomas as well. These are the three guys with the Chicago Bulls. At the end of the day, didn't necessarily perform in high, production of minutes. Didn't exactly get a lot of opportunities on this court for the Chicago Bulls, but I guess we'll have to just wait and see how the future will go for some of these guys. So, the first player I want to talk about is Tony Bradley, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Bradley is a player that we originally brought in from the Chicago Bulls team as a backup center. And all things being considered, I think we can safely say he's not had the best of seasons for the Chicago Bulls, obviously averaging 3 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, and 0.5 assists, 55 games played. To be fair, he was available for most games of this season, but some of those games he simply just was not selected for this Chicago Bulls team, which is extremely, at the end of the day, telling of what our future or what our past was with the Chicago Bulls team, crying out for a backup center. We signed Tony Bradley to be that player, and at the end of the day, he failed to deliver in that avenue, which made us cry once again for more backup center coverage for the Chicago Bulls, which is why we brought in Tristan Thompson, which I will talk about at a later video as well. Don't think I forgot about him. Tony Bradley, in my opinion, is a guy that we have seen do damage against the Chicago Bulls team. I will never forget that Philadelphia 76ers game because we brought him in, and that's the first thing that came to my mind when he was playing for the Philadelphia 76ers and he faced the Chicago Bulls team with Wendell Carter in the team, and he absolutely went to work, had an outstanding game, and it goes to show that that's the potential that he can live up to every single night if he wanted to. At the end of the day, obviously things come into factor. He had a back injury for most of the season, which hindered his performances, and he had a much better time for the Chicago Bulls at the end of the year, which goes to show everything with this Chicago Bulls team. If he's having a really strong end to the season, he was able to make some mid-ranges for the Chicago Bulls, run out and transition, get some layups, get some boards. He was decent at the end of the season. I can't lie whatsoever about that retrospect. And obviously the start of the season was a big problem for him, and maybe he just wasn't fully healthy, but one way or another, he simply just did not meet those expectations as the backup center for the Chicago Bulls. So, with all that being said, looking at his contract, I believe he's going to have one more year with the Chicago Bulls team, according to my knowledge. And I believe that the contract that he has is actually a player option with this team. So basically, we're going to be leaving it up to Tony Bradley if he wants to remain on the Chicago Bulls team for next year or not. But if you're asking me, let's just say Tony Bradley is willing and able to stay with the Chicago Bulls team. My question is, will he actually stay with the Chicago Bulls team, or should he stay with the Chicago Bulls team? And I've got to be honest, I would like to see Tony Bradley here next year. That might be controversial, don't get me wrong. I know there are many people out there that would not be willing to give Tony Bradley a chance next year. But as I said in this video, he's had a good end to the season, and that counts for something with the Chicago Bulls team. At the end of the day, we played Tristan Thompson, who in my opinion did not live up to those expectations that was given to him among coming with the Chicago Bulls team. There were not many times where we utilized him correctly, and there was not many times where he really took advantage of any of the playing times that he got. Tony Bradley, with garbage time minutes, in my opinion, took advantage of some of those opportunities and was probably the best player in those garbage time minutes. And in my opinion, opinion, that counts for something when it comes to the Chicago Bulls. As a player option only making $2 million next year, in my opinion, there's low risk, high reward for Tony Bradley. If he signs upon here, he could potentially be involved in a trade package with the Chicago Bulls team. But even if he isn't, he's a perfect guy, in my opinion, to be a third option center. I don't think we should be using Tony Bradley as the backup center next year, but I would be more than happy to see him be that third option on the bench as a center and potentially come in here and there. Or if there is injuries concerns for the Chicago Bulls, Tony Bradley can play a role in any given time. That's where I see Tony Bradley's role on this team being. He's 24 years old. He still has room to improve. He still could probably be a solid role player if he goes to another team. But if he is to stay here, I see that role for Tony Bradley being the role that he can be really good at. And we'll go and look for more backup center options in the offseason, which in my opinion is the go-to for the Chicago Bulls. I think that's one of the most important positions to fill, getting a rim protector on this team off of the bench or potentially starting for the Chicago Bulls. It's essential in my eyes. So we'll move on from Tony Bradley real quick, and we're going to move on to Matt Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I haven't talked too much about Matt Thomas for a long period of time, because at the end of the day, for I guess close to half the year, he just wasn't playing for the Chicago Bulls team. He did suffer an injury at the end of the year. I believe it was a back contusion, correct me if I'm wrong, that kept him out for the NBA playoffs and the end of the year. He averaged 4 points per game with 1 rebound and 0.5 assist. All you need to look at, in my opinion, when it comes to Matt Thomas is his 3-point percentage, because that was what he was brought into this team to do, and he made 38.5% from the 3-point line, which is slightly below his career average of 40% from the 3. So that's exactly what Matt Thomas brings. He's a sharpshooter. You run plays for him at the 3-point line. He's not someone that's going to thrill you or excite you with his athleticism. He's not going to be a strong defensive player in the NBA as well, but he can shoot the basketball at a high level. And if you give him the right plays, if you create a team that revolves around ball movement, I see Matt Thomas being a very good player on this Chicago Bulls team. But as the 15th man on this team, it was very easy to know that he wasn't going to get that much game time. He's basically an emergency type player for the Chicago Bulls. If we had, because we had so many guards, if we had a number of guards out, that's when Matt Thomas gets those game times, which we did see this season. We saw Lonzo Ball, we saw Alex Caruso both not play for the Chicago Bulls this season for a long period of time. We did see a stretch where Kobe White was injured at the beginning of the season as well. So we have seen a lot of guard injuries for this team, which made Matt Thomas's minutes available, and he did present himself in some of those games. He had some strong games, he had some bad games, and I think that's the basic thing you're going to expect from Matt Thomas. I don't think he's going to shock the world with how he plays, but he can be valuable if you put him in the right environment. So the question I have for you guys now, do you see Matt Thomas staying with the Chicago Bulls team? Is he someone that you want to see on this team next season? It's a bit of an interesting one, because at the end of the day, he's the 15th man, and I think he can be good if you give him the right, as I said, if you give him the right environment, he can be very good for a Chicago Bulls team, for any team around the league. He's had some good games for this team, but ultimately, I think he's going to be a free agent next year as well. I think he does have a qualifying offer of $2 million. At the end of the day, I definitely see the Chicago Bulls picking up that qualifying offer if we are, I guess, not really looking to move him on, maybe give him another chance on this team, but most likely there is a fair chance he's going to be a free agent next year. And again, it's one of those players where I feel if we don't get the right players, let's just say we have a list of players on this team, guards or forwards or centers, whoever it is, and we don't acquire those guys. Let's say it's mission fails in free agency. None of the guys that we wanted to come here. I'd bring Matt Thomas in once again for the 15th man. But all in all, if all the players that we want are ready to come here and we have a luxury of choices, I would move Matt Thomas on and bring someone viable for a position on this team in that's going to be getting more minutes and getting more production in those minutes for the Chicago Bulls. So he's one of those guys where, again, similar to his role with the Chicago Bulls, an emergency type player. In my opinion, he should be an emergency type signing. If we don't succeed in free agency, then I would see Matt Thomas return with the Chicago Bulls team, and hopefully the style of play around the Chicago Bulls team will actually suit Matt Thomas in next season. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Tyler Cook. Now, it's funny how a lot of people had their mind changed on Tyler Cook, and I feel like everybody had a right to do that. I remember at the beginning of the season last year, when we were talking about the final positions for the Chicago Bulls, was it going to be Matt Thomas? Was it going to be Stanley Johnson? Was it going to be Tyler Cook? We also had a two-way contract with the Chicago Bulls team. Who's going to acquire that? Matt Thomas received the last position in terms of the 15th spot on the team. Stanley Johnson got waived, and Tyler Cook got the two-way contract. And at that time, I was very perplexed. I was confused. And many people could have said Stanley Johnson refused the two-way contract. Again, he's a veteran guy, so that does make sense. I'm sure he doesn't want to play in the G League if there are other teams willing to give him a spot on their team. But also, I think the front office saw something in Tyler Cook that no one else really did. And maybe, again, I know there are a lot of people that had their faith in Tyler Cook. I'm not discrediting you guys, but I think the vast majority of people didn't see what Tyler Cook was all about. And I've got to be honest, in this position where he was a two-way player that played a lot of time in the G League, but also played a fair good amount of his minutes as a backup center, as a power forward for the Chicago Bulls, in one of those games guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo as well, I think he did okay this year. He only averaged 3.4 points and 2.7 rebounds. He played 20 games for the Chicago Bulls this year. So the stats don't scream out at you. The stats are not, I guess, amazing. But he does have a lot of upside, in my opinion, to his game. Again, I could definitely see him being a small ball center in a couple years' time for a good team. Just because, maybe not starting, but definitely off of the bench. Just because a lot of leagues, a lot of teams might want to use a small ball lineup here and there. Not maybe the main go-to, as it shouldn't be with this Chicago Bulls team, but for a guy that's that athletic, in my opinion, has the body to play in that position, can be a very physical player, does finish well around the paint as well, he does like to dunk the ball, and he can get to the foul line as well. I think those are all good qualities for a guy that could be looking to play as a small ball center in the future. So keep that in mind when it comes to Tyler Cook. And this year, he's had some lapses of concentration. I think that's the biggest weakness to his game, because when he was playing on form, I thought he was a great backup center for the Chicago Bulls in those limited amount of game times that he played. But once you see him lack that concentration, you instantly lose your spot, because those types of players, they're two-way players at the end of the day. They go to the G League, they come to the Chicago Bulls team when we need the spots filled, and he did well in those areas, but he's not the main guy. He's not a Zach LaVine, he's not a Lonzo Ball, he's not a DeMar DeRozan. Those guys could probably get away with some lapses of concentration within a game because they have the quality to pick it up when other guys don't. Tyler Cook's not one of those. So there was one game I remember specifically, I don't remember it fondly because I don't remember the team that we played, but he lost so much of that concentration as the backup center for the Chicago Bulls, and we took him out of that game. And I think after that game, he simply just did not get those minutes again, because you can't be one of those guys that lapses in concentration. I do remember making a video saying that I don't trust Tony Bradley or Tyler Cook to be the backup centers for the Chicago Bulls because of those lapses of concentrations, because of those inconsistent performances. But Tyler Cook's still very young at his age at the end of the day. Again, he's only 24 years old. He's a two-way player. And I guess the question is now, would you bring Tyler Cook back for the Chicago Bulls? And again, it's a bit of an interesting concept when it comes to Tyler Cook, because again, it's a low-risk, high-reward type of player. But if you're looking at the previous, I guess, two-way players that the Chicago Bulls have had, has he really done better than most of those guys? You're looking at the Devon Dotsons of the world. You're looking at the Adam McCokas of the world. You're looking at those types of guys, and you have to ask the question, has he done better than those guys for the Chicago Bulls this year? Again, feel free to let me know in the comments below, because I honestly don't know. I think Adam McCoka should have had a better opportunity on this team. But again, once the team started developing winning habits and we started to get teams, I guess, in direction for the Chicago Bulls to allow us to win, Adam McCoka wasn't part of those plans. And clearly Tyler Cook was. So I would be willing to give him another chance this year, in all honesty, next season for the Chicago Bulls, just because, again, a low-risk, a high-reward player. He's not one of those guys that's going to get massive amounts of, I guess, time in the NBA, time with the Chicago Bulls. And he's also not giving up a roster spot. He's not the 15th man. He's giving up a two-way contract spot, which at the end of the day could go to anyone. It's as simple as that. So I personally think we should give Tyler Cook another chance next year, but at the end of the day, it's definitely something that is up for interpretation, and I know not many people will agree with that statement that I said, but at the end of the day, it's a low-risk, high-reward type of player. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't hurt us in a deep, meaningful way, but if it does work out, he could potentially be a guy that we can continue to see flourish on the Chicago Bulls team. There are teams that have been seeing something in him before, and this team has to give him due diligence to see whether or not he can succeed. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in another Chicago Bulls video, ladies and gentlemen. I believe I have 4 players left to go. Tristan Thompson, and then obviously the big 3. Let's just wait and see what I have to say about those two videos. I haven't really made my mind up on some of those guys either. So again, by the time the video comes, things will definitely change in my, I guess, opinion. Have a wonderful and safe day. Take care and peace.